What I do is I read and try to explain some philosophy. This is Time and Physical Geometry by Hilary Putnam out of the Journal of Philosophy. This is a classic paper from 1967. It was requested by chat. But yeah, as always, you may know more about this than me. I will do my best trying to explain it, but I don't know. We'll find out, and we'll see. So here we go. And always feel free to ask questions along the way. This is kind of the point as we discuss. Hilary says, I think that if we attempted to set out the man on the street's view of the nature of time, we would find that the main principle underlying his convictions on the subject might be stated something as follows. 1. All and only things that exist now are real. Okay, so this is a presentist theory where the things that exist now in the present are real. Future things which do not already exist are not real on this view, although of course they will be real when the appropriate time has come to be the present time. Similarly, past things which have ceased to exist are not real, although they were real in the past. Seems like a very, very reasonable, and I guess this is why they say man on the street view of things. Obviously, we shall have to make some assumptions about the concept real if we are to discuss the man on the street's view at all. The assumptions I shall make are as follows. All right, so for people who don't know, Hilary Putnam is really a top philosopher of the 20th century, wrote some rather influential papers, and people took what he said really fucking seriously. So that is a lot of reason to not fucking trust anything he's saying in this little thing. So when someone like Hilary Putnam is saying, we're going to set out what the man on the street is, this is all window dressing. This is all set up. We are being set up right now. What the fuck does Hilary Putnam know of the man on the street? This is like some haughty professor, probably. I don't actually know if that's the case. Maybe Hilary was like just really normal sort of dude. But this is someone who's massively sophisticated, wrote important philosophy, knows exactly what he is doing. This is not to be trusted. Not to be trusted. Unreal says temporal nihilism, nothing is ever real. Yeah, except what I say right now, which is temporal nihilism is not real. That's the only real thing. K-Par says it's just events arranged real-wise. Yeah, that sounds about right. So we can... Okay, continuing. So these are the... obviously, we shall have to make some assumptions about the concept real if we are to discuss the man on the street's view at all. The assumptions Hilary shall make are as follows. 1. I now am real. Of course, this assumption changes each time I announce that I'm making it, since I now refers to a different instantaneous me. You see this shit? This I now. This is sneaky as fuck. Sneaky as fuck, because he's not saying I'm real, which is like, the Cartesian I think therefore I am. Like, I think, then you say I am. This is a modified Descartes, and he's not saying I think therefore I am. He's saying I now am real, and with a little hyphen between the I and the now, which is meaningless. You've never seen that before in your life. I've never seen it before in my life. Who the fuck says that? Okay, a la carte, yeah. So this is just worrisome. Now, I know what I think he's doing, because there's something called indexicals. So when you say I, you're referring to yourself, or you're referring to, and when you do it, you're referring to the now time. So he's trying to say, look, when you say the word I, you are basically, this is my guess at the moment, you're indexing that yourself and that time and place. Dasein? No. I'm throwing hands at Hilary. I don't normally read the greats here on Unreal Brian. I don't normally read people I know are competent. So I've got my guard up, all right? Like, this is like you're going up, you're fighting with Mike Tyson now. You're not leaving your hands down. Even if you know Mike Tyson can punch through your hands, you're keeping your face protected. That's what I'm doing right here, okay? Yeah, it's not Dasein. But like, yeah, this is indexicals. All right, so 2. And like, so already I'm suspicious at 1 because I don't know what an I now is. Like, that's the point. What the fuck is this? This is very sneaky, whatever he's doing right here. All right, so the second assumption is at least one other observer is real, and it is possible for this other observer to be in motion relative to me. that's okay. That's some standard physics shit. That, like, you know, there's other things in the world and they're moving. That one's fine. That nothing looks weird about this one. You love the boxing metaphor? Thank you. I did just come up with that one. But, like, literally, we are, like, you're going up against someone who's non-trivial. You be on guard. That's all it is. I wrote a paragraph about magnetic lensing today. Oh, around, like, what's a magnetic lensing? Is that, like, sort of like gravitational lensing, but you're using magnets instead? That's kind of cool. Sounds like fun. Okay, and the most important assumption, which will be referred to when properly understood as the principle that there are no privileged observers. So we've got a principle that there are no privileged observers, is assumption 3. If it is the case that all and only the things that stand in a certain relation are to me now are real and you now are also real, then it is also the case that all and only the things that stand in relation to you now are real. And the relation R to you now are real. Again, this is this hyphenated temporal thing going on with this shit, which I don't really trust. This me now and you now. So this is just indexed at some time, which we're calling now. And it is also the case that all and only thing that stand in the relation to relation R to us is real. Okay, we'll see what that means. Funk Thor says, the I now is element inside set of real thing, inside of what man on the street thinks are real. Is transitive property of the relation real? I don't think that's what it is. I don't think that's what it is at all. I think this is an indexical style thing saying the nowness of the I. Now, how that relates to the real, I don't think Putnam has said yet. A third property? Yeah. But we'll see. We'll have to see, Funk Thor. Like, maybe, but Hilary Putnam has not said yet. Hydrocanemy said Ampere's electrodynamics, referring to the magnetic field produced by the electricity passing through the wire, differing from a fixed magnet. This is left out of the many advances in the theory that followed, could be said to be the apparent cause of the electromagnetic spectrum following the curvature of time, space at the speed of light, despite not having any mass. So that light's magnetic field with like charges of lines traveling in the opposite directions repel, creating something with effects. Oh, okay, so it's the the motion of the electricity or the electrons creates a magnetic field, and you're using that as changing the field properties. Interesting. Okay, cool. But physics, yeah. Funk Thor says, if I now real and you now is real, and for you now object C is real, then for me is also real. Yeah, so that's what this third thing is. Okay, that's fair. But that's all, like, yeah, we've got transitive on this third. Okay. So if it's the case that all and only things that stand in relation R to me are real and you now are also real, then it's the case that all and only things that stand in the relation are to... Okay. Are you now real? Okay, so it's just, yeah, so your transitivity, fine. We'll see. Me now, do. Fair enough, Funk Thor. So, yeah, we'll see if that's where it's going. It may be. I'm not entirely sure it's just transitivity yet, though. But it could be. It could be. Okay. If the assumption 3 is not to be vacuous, it is necessary to understand the expression the things as referring not just to present things, but to all things past, present, and future, whether we regard all these things as real or not. That is, 3 is to be understood as stated in tenseless language, except for the indexical terms me now and you now. And this is what I was talking about, this indexical shit. It's trying to build in the time into the object of me and you. Okay. Secondly, R must be restricted to the physical relations that are supposed to be independent of the choice of a coordinate system, as simultaneity was in classical physics, and to be definable in a tenseless way in terms of the fundamental notions of physics. And lastly, it must not depend on anything accidental, physically speaking, that all and only the things that stand in the relation R to me now are real. Okay. So basically it's saying, look, if something exists in relation to me as like in the current moment, then it's real in this universal sense. Okay. We note that if we assume classical physics and take the relation R to be the relation of simultaneity, then on the view, yeah, so what is the relation R? I don't think it was just transitivity, and you can see now we can define it as a relation of simultaneity. And that's not, yeah, that will change then over time, what the properties are. Unreal says, am I right that he has so far backed into the stew a weirdly sausage-sliced view of time? Yeah, this is the thing. We're talking about the nows. And so we've got time, like every sort of like moving spotlight sort of theory. And you could call that time slices. And that's kind of, you might be right that we're doing slices of time here. That may be exactly what's going on, Brian. Okay. So if we assume classical physics and take the relation R to be the relation of simultaneity, then on the view that 1, it is true that all and only the things that stand in relation R to me now are real, and the principle of 3 is satisfied because the relation of simultaneity is transitive. Yeah, so this is the transitivity that Funkthor was saying. So anything that exists simultaneously with me is also real because we have this transitive relation. So then there are parts of my R that are outside your R sometimes. I'm wondering if that's where we're going, K-Pars, because we started off with the classical physics and simultaneity, and then that's going to break, obviously. Finally, I shall assume special relativity, as K-Pars was bringing up. Now we discover something really remarkable. Namely, on every natural choice of the relation R, it turns out that the future things or events are already real. For example, suppose I take the relation R to be the relation of simultaneity as I suggested by 1. For the remainder of this paper, I shall assume the following perfectly possible physical situation to be actual. You now and I now are at the same place now, but moving with relative velocities which are very large relative to the speed of light, which I take to be 1. Thus, our world lines look as shown in figure 1, and they've drawn our light cone for the purpose of the later discussion. Okay, so we've got... Let me see if I can make this a little bit better. So, we've got people... We've got light... I don't know exactly... We've got a light way... Oh, God, that was terrible. I'm not looking. We've got this one and this one. This is some light way. This is and then we've got like, all right, so this goes like this. This is the light cone. And I think this is time is going this way. This is time. So that's this. And so this is my now and this is your now is over here. So we've got 2 nows. So you got like this one with the lines through it. Okay? So this is the world lines. Oh no, we've got different world lines and they feel now. Okay. All right. So it's going along. Whatever. It's a light cone if you know what that is. If you don't know what a light cone is, look, the speed of light's fixed. And so there's parts of the universe that you'll never get to because you'd have to travel faster than the speed of light, but that's impossible. So there's a spot right next to you that you will never reach because to catch it, you'd have to be faster than the speed of light, and you're not. It's not possible in terms of contemporary understanding of physics. So if you're moving away from each other very fast, you will never be able to return and catch up with the person because unless they turn around, you would have to go faster than the speed of light to catch up. Yeah. Okay. Okie dokie, so that's what the light cones are. Okay, so now, then, we cannot take the relation of simultaneity in my coordinate system to be R without violating the way in which the principle that there are no privileged observers is intended to be understood. Yeah, because look, the other person has no access to what you're doing, and so you're the only person who can see what's going on in your light cone because they're too far away and they will never see what happens because they're outside the light. The light coming off you now will never reach them because they're moving away from you and they're too far away from you and they're moving too fast that the light will never catch up with them. Okay. Rather, we have to take R to be the relation of simultaneity in the observer's coordinate system. Then if I assume that all and only those things which stand in this relation R to me now are real, I find that you now are also real since I now and you now are simultaneously at a point and is simultaneously in every coordinate system. Hence, everything that stands in relation to R relation R to you, everything that is simultaneous to you now in your coordinate system is also real. But it is well known that, as a consequence of special relativity, there are events which lie in the future according to my coordinate system, and which lie in the present of you now according to your coordinate system. Since these things stand in relation to R now to you, and you now are real, and it was assumed that all and only the things that stand in the relation to R to me now are real, the principle 3 requires that I call these future things and events real. Yeah, so this is the problem. When somebody is moving in a different speed that you, different direction than you, speed than you, what they can do, what they think is happening with them, because it's right next to them, they think that's all real time, but that takes time to get to you, and so for you, that looks like in the past, or in the future, depending on who's moving where, okay? And the same thing with them. Like something that's happening over here, well, there's lag before it gets to you, and so for things that I think are simultaneous, there's lag between all of our connections, and, the stream isn't exactly synced up for all of us, and so things seem out of time on Twitch a little bit because of lag, but imagine this on the physical scale and it's physical reality that's lagging. That's basically all this is. Energy says, I find it interesting that Putnam is arguing this when I thought he was a neo-Kantian. Kantianism, to my understanding, believes in different understanding of time. I don't think Putnam is going to argue against physics. Just because he's a neo-Kantian doesn't mean he's going to go against physics. He's going to find a way to make modern physics work for Kant, not the other way around. You're not going to impress anyone trying to take a Kantian theory of time and understanding from hundreds of years ago and try to force it on modern science. You wouldn't be like, maybe this is Kantian in the end, I don't know, but the idea that he's going to take a Kantian understanding of time is really unlikely. It sounds like a relativity type argument. Yeah, exactly, Rocco. What's up? Okay. All right, so where was I? Okay. Yeah, so these things are real. So everything is real. Okay, but actually I now have a contradiction. For these future things do not stand in the relation R to me now, and so my assumption that all and only the things that stand in this relation R to me now are real was already inconsistent with the principle that there are no privileged observers. Yeah. Funk Thor says, well, yes, it's like the experiment with a person inside a train car from the middle of which light was emitted in both directions. For the person inside, the light will reach left at the same time, right and left. For the person staying outside the train, the platform of the train is moving, and that light flies toward him will arrive at the end of the car faster than the front of the car, and therefore these two events are not simultaneous, and one of them is in the future. Yeah. Yep. This is classical special relativity. So yeah, busy day, time to relax. I hope you have a good, chill out, relaxing end of your day. K-Par says, I mean to say a supernova went off, even if you were beside me because the speed of C is fixed, it will arrive at our eyes at different times, so there's a moment where it's real to me and not you. Yeah, exactly. So these things happen. Okay, the difficulty is obvious, says Putnam. What the principle that there are no privileged observers requires is simply that the relation R be transitive, that is, it have the property that from X R Y and Y R Z, it follows that X R Z. Simultaneity in my coordinate system has this property, since if X is simultaneous with Y in my coordinate system and Y is simultaneous with Z in my coordinate system, then X is also simultaneous with Z in my coordinate system. But simultaneity in my coordinate system is not admissible as a choice of R because it depends on the coordinate system. And the relation X is simultaneous with Y in the coordinate system of X, which is essentially the same relation we just considered, while admissible, is not transitive, since if I now am simultaneous with you now in the coordinate system of me now, and you now are simultaneous with the event X in the coordinate system of you now, it does not follow that I now am simultaneous with X in the coordinate system of me now. Okay, yeah, so if you tie everything to the coordinate system, then yes, it's not going to be transitive because, again, that would privilege one over the other by saying it's like in the future, in the past, or one's real and one's not. So you can say, according to the coordinate, an observer in that coordinate system, it looks this way, but that means you're not privileging that coordinate system anymore. And so it's not simultaneous. Okay. Now then, if we combine the fact that the relation R is required by 3 to be transitive with our desire to preserve the following principle, which is 1/2 of 1. 2. All things that exist now are real. Yeah, exactly, Rob. We're getting eyes all screwy. This is what happens with physics. Energy says, what I'm referring to is the fact that there are very viable neo-Lorentzian interpretations of the science of special relativity, which to my understanding would be contradicting this argument that they're making by positing a universal now with an aether which is compatible with Kant. Okay, but I don't think that's what's going on in this paper. Like, I very, very, very much doubt that this is what the paper is about. It doesn't look like Hilary's going this way, and it's not set up to do that sort of thing. Now, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm sure, like, there's someone that has done this. Like, I believe you. The issue here is, I don't think that's what Hilary Putnam is up to here at all. So, it's like, yeah. It's like, he could have done that, but he didn't do that here. So I was like, yeah. Okay. All things that exist now are real, and then we quickly see that future things must be real. Okay. 4. If the relation R satisfies 2, and I take 2 to mean, at least when I assert it, that all things that exist now according to my coordinate system are real, and you now are as in figure 1, then you now must stand in the relation R to me now, and since you exist both now and here. But if the relation R... Oh, see this fucking indexical stuff? You're using both now and here, but that's not relative. That's just you referring to yourself. But is that relative? I don't know. You're saying it's Putnam's mistaken? Okay, that's fine. I mean, you can disagree with Putnam. That's no big deal. Like, you don't have to believe Putnam's stuff. Functor says if he says that there are not preferred observers, then he says that aether doesn't exist, but there are preferred frames of reference. Yeah, it's not a mistake. It's a disagreement about this stuff. I don't think this is what Putnam's talking about. You can say that he's mistaken in his approach. That's fair. Did he make a mistake in this argument according to this argument? That's not what you're saying, though, here. That's a different argument. I think that's what Functor is going. It's not a mistake in the argument, and you might think it's a mistaken perspective. That's fine. Okay. So, yeah. So, what are we doing? But if the relation R always holds between all the events that are on some one simultaneity line in my coordinate system, and me at the appropriate time, then since the laws of nature are invariant under Lorentz transformation, I guess this is where we have a disagreement with, or energy has a disagreement by the principle of special relativity, the relation R must also hold between all the events on some one simultaneity line in any observer's coordinate system, and that observer at the appropriate time. Okay, so what we're doing here is we're stepping back from the coordinate systems that are going on and saying we could have a third God's eye coordinate system that is sort of coordinating all these other coordinate systems, because you're just putting a super view on this. It looks like, see, there's a simultaneity line, but how would you see that? You're not in any of these systems, but someone else could draw one through it if they were separate from all the other observer systems. Hence, all the events that are simultaneous with you now in your coordinate system must also bear the relation R to you now. Let X be one such event, which is, quote, in the future according to my coordinate system. If our velocities are as shown in figure 1, then such an event X must always exist. Then, since the event X bears the relation R to you now, and you now bear the relation R to me now, the event X bears the relation R to me now. But we chose R to be such that all and only those events which bear R to me now are real. So the event X, which is a future event according to my coordinate system, is already real. Yeah, so as K-Par says, like if that person sees a supernova and I agree that everything that you see is real, then that thing that you saw, that the supernova already happened, is real to me too, even though you say you saw it. And you can see what's happening here. You've got information being used that some other person has that you don't have, that's traveling faster than the speed of light. Because if the speed of light indicates something happened to you, and I'm agreeing that everything that you know happens, well, that means that the information to get to me has already reached me because you know it. Because the knowledge somehow is separate. And we have a problem here because that future stuff is real because you know it to be real, even though it has not reached me yet. But that means it has traveled to the information somehow in my reality has been updated according to stuff that I could not have known about yet, according to the speed of light. So knowledge is traveling faster. Here's what's happened. The epistemology here is different because you know what it is? I think the notion of real is universal, and as soon as one person knows it, then it becomes real for everyone in the universe. And that doesn't actually work. You need to have separate, sort of information spheres almost. Because it doesn't make sense to say, okay, the knowledge that you have on a different side of the universe matters in some sense to me. It doesn't, because I can't know about it and at the speed unless the speed of light has reached me in some sense. Okay, the space fight tomorrow. A different problem connected with time was studied by Aristotle. Aristotle was what we would today call an indeterminist. He did not think that the outcome of certain future events, his example was who will win the sea fight tomorrow, was determined at the present time. Funkthor says, it is true for non-causally connected events as light which touched the left and right side of the trains, the two events are independent. But if we speak about causally connected events, as a photon is emitted and falls on a button that triggers some action, the causally dependent events are all are future in all reference systems. The causally dependent events are future in all reference systems. I don't know what you mean by the events are future in all reference systems. How would something be future in all reference systems? But that's the issue, is the causal connection. It's a non-physical connection here. But yeah, that's the point. Okay, T1 and T2. Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, so I mean, is it that the light touching the two sides of the train are not causally connected if they were emitted from the same light source? Yeah, inside the light cone. Yeah. The ordering, not the index. Yeah. I'm not quite getting this, Funkthor. I'm sorry. But yeah, the issue here is that when you're saying what the other person saw is real, then you're agreeing that everything's real for them is real for you, but that's outside your light cone. And you couldn't know that. And so the fact that you're calling that real is giving you information at faster than the speed of light here. And so everything that's inside your light cone, that's fine. But if it's outside your light cone, it's not fine because you're getting information and a causal relation there. Some sort of causal stuff. Effects can't precede their causes. Yeah, that's fair. But the trick going on here is that the epistemology is moving faster than the speed of light. So if something is caused outside my light cone and then I'm calling it real, that realness, that knowledge of the event can't be in my light cone. That's why we're getting a contradiction here, because the speed of light prevents any information from reaching me about that event outside my light cone. It's too far away. The light couldn't have reached me yet. Hydrocannabinoid says a set of underlying velocity below zero is something to do with space relativity, superposition over simultaneity. Yeah, this gets complicated. Funkthor says, yeah, we just say that the time ordering can apply to only to causally connected events. Yeah, that's where I'm getting at, Funkthor. So, and you can see what's happening here is you've got this realness and then you've got the physics, but the realness carries with it some sort of epistemic import that everyone knows it once it's real. It's part of the universe, but that's not how this works. The realness that we know something the knowledge can't be like, it has to be causally connected in some sense. You can't know something that's, impossible for us to have any causal connection to. It'd be just a miracle then, which this would be, for us to know something, for the light to have reached us faster than the speed of light can go. Okay, continuing. So this is one problem. This is a different problem now. But we can see, I think what's going on here is this sneaky use of the word real in the first example. Second example, the space fight tomorrow. A different problem connected with time was studied by Aristotle. Aristotle was what we would today call an indeterminist. He did not think that the outcome of certain future events, his example was, who will win the sea fight tomorrow, was determined at the present time. Given this assumption, he found it difficult to believe that the statement, the A's will win the sea fight, already has a truth value, that it is already true or already false. Rather, he suggested that such future contingent statements have no truth value. Yeah, it's in God's hands. What do we know about the future? And this actually also goes why the Greeks did not develop probability, because they did not have a sense that you could actually quantify future states of the world. It was all just, in God's hands in some sense. Some philosophers would say that this belief rested upon a simple mistake on Aristotle's part, that it is true and it is false are tenseless predicates, and that statements are true and false simplicator, not already true or now true or going to be true, etc. But this is begging the question. If any statement that is true at some time is true at every time, then indeed there is some point to dropping this way of speaking and making true and false tenseless, which they clearly are not in ordinary language, by the way. But the correctness of this view, whether you express it by saying that truth is eternal or by saying that truth is tenseless, does not matter. Was what Aristotle was challenging. It is unfair to assume a form of language which presupposes that Aristotle was wrong, and then use the assumed correctness of this linguistic formalism as an argument against Aristotle. Again, like I was saying, the Greeks did not quantify over states of the universe. They just didn't do this. And so you can't say the state of the universe is going to be this way in the future, because they just didn't do that. That was not something that they thought that we had control. We could really imagine. Of course they could imagine scenarios, but they couldn't say the future was going to be that way, because that was out of our hands. That's in the hands of something else, the gods, whatever it was. And so you couldn't they had no sense of a different this goes back to the problem of the points. Pascal and Pierre de Fermat, when they came up with the theory of probability, they discovered it. Fermat did, really, in discussion with Blaise Pascal. But the idea that you can quantify over states, that didn't exist back in ancient Greece. It would be easy to write down a list of predicates P1 through Pn such that, on Aristotle's view, the statements that any past or completed present event has one of the properties P1 through Pn always has a truth value, but the statement that a future event has one of the properties Pi does not have a truth value. Thus, Aristotle's view is sort of a supplement to what we call the man on the street's view of time. See, this is real dangerous. The idea that Aristotle is somehow agreeing with the man on the street, or the man on the street is agreeing with Aristotle, I find very weird. I wouldn't do this, because Aristotle is fucking sophisticated, and although Aristotle had a good grasp of everyday life, because living in Greece, whatever, he seemed like a normal enough person, but the idea that we're just gonna be Aristotle agrees with a normal human, it's no, motherfucker. Just no. This is dangerous. Continuing. The principle 1 asserts a fundamental difference between the present and both the past and the future, but it does not assert any difference between the past and the future. Neither past things nor future things can now be called real. Aristotle would perhaps have accepted this, but he would have added that there is a fundamental difference nonetheless between the past and the future, specifically that past events are now determined, the relevant statements about them have now acquired truth values which will stick for all time, but future events are undetermined, and at least some statements about them are not yet either true or false. The fact that you can change the future but not the past would have been explained by Aristotle in terms of this fundamental asymmetry between the two. And you notice no fucking references to Aristotle in any of this area. This is just making statements about how Hilary Putnam feels Aristotle would have been, but there are no quotes here. This is just, attributing stuff to Aristotle that I don't know if there's actual Aristotle scholars in chat would be able to confirm or deny. Now, would this be would Aristotle actually say that you can change stuff in the future and that's why it's different from the past? Maybe. I don't know. Maybe Aristotle said something different. I don't know. And you want to know what happens next? Look at this shit. Aristotle was wrong. Okay. No quotes on Aristotle. No references. Maybe, like I said, this is one of the greats of the 20th century. Hilary Putnam may have been an Aristotle scholar. I don't know what Hilary Putnam's background was. But we're getting an Aristotle was wrong here. Aristotle was wrong. At least he was wrong if relativity is right, and there is today better reason to believe relativity than to believe Aristotle on this point at least. To see this, let us revert to the situation depicted in Figure 1, and let there be a space flight which is in the future in my coordinate system. Yeah, exactly, hydrocarbanoid. It's like, why are you beating up on Aristotle for physics from 2,500 years ago? It's like, yeah. Aristotle probably understood Galilean relativity, but yeah, there's no chance in hell he had special relativity. That's not his fault. And beating up on him for not understanding special relativity, it's like, why? Okay, so let there be spaceflight, which is in the future in my coordinate system, that is above the now of the me now, but in the past of you in the coordinate system, that is below the now of you now. Then, so basically, you saw the flight of the spaceship, but that light of it taking off has not yet reached me. So when I see that, it'll be like, oh, it's taking off now, but that's in the future for me right now because that light hasn't reached me yet. Okay. Then since the space flight is in the future for me, I must say that the statement all the A's will win or have already won has no truth value. But if you say that this same statement has a truth value, as you must if Aristotle is right, since it lies in the past for you, then you and I cannot both be right. Nor can just one of us be right without becoming a privileged observer. Yeah, so again, if you saw the thing take flight, then you can say it's real. But for me, where I haven't seen the light yet, I say it's not got a truth value, then, it doesn't have a truth value for me, and who's right at that point? The point becomes even clearer when viewed a bit more abstractly. Again, this is another problem with epistemology, because it's you're saying it doesn't have a truth value, but this is an if you say the statement has a truth value. It's not just we're not just talking about the truth value here. You're saying what you can say about it, and that's really I think what's at issue here. Unreal says, quote, however, he made an error in counting the total number of teeth in an adult horse. While Aristotle claimed horses had 40 teeth, they actually is up to 44 teeth in total. End quote. Aristotle was wrong. Yeah. Capar says, so what does this leave for history? I guess the history is separate than the event itself. I mean, you have to say more than that. What do you mean history there? History is a narrative. History is, what do you mean the event itself? What do you mean the history in this case? That's actually a really loaded sort of question. The only thing that we're talking about in physics is did you see the photon or not? And did that light source go off? You can't actually, it's kind of hard to pin down all the other shit because that counts as something there. Okay, parties, I just thought how weird it is to say the past isn't real anymore. Okay. I mean, okay, that's fair. I missed your first sentence. You can have different senses of real. It's not existing anymore, but it was real. You can say it was real, but there's only certain things that exist now, and you can just do that sort of dodge. Be like, the current world is what exists, but it existed in the past a certain way. We can call that real. It may not currently exist, but plenty of ways to get around this in some sense. What's that leave history? Well, there may only be one history, and that history is real, but it no longer exists, as in it doesn't have like materiality anymore. The materiality is gone, but everything else exists about it. Unreal says, quote, "While not all Aristotle's claims about horse teeth were correct, his efforts to document and understand equine dental anatomy laid important groundwork for future veterinary studies," end quote. Not the sort of thing that could just be said of contemporary philosophers, not so relevant to physics, just a quirky thing. That was the thing that, for people who don't know, it was a long time before anyone checked how many teeth were in a horse's mouth after ancient Greece. And the idea that a horse had 40 teeth in its mouth came from Aristotle. Aristotle either got it wrong, didn't even look, or thought he could just come up with the right number. And this sort of mistake got passed down through history. It's like, yeah, you can't shit on Aristotle too much for this sort of thing. He was doing the best he could back in the day. Granted, Aristotle was a jackass in other ways, but okay, he was trying to document natural history. He did a good job of it comparatively at the time. And it's cool. But beating up on someone 2,500 years ago for not getting everything right in a very different world, having very different standards, is just sort of anachronistic bullshit on our part. But this is what you do in philosophy, is you say, oh, look at great philosopher, we know so much better than they did now, because it makes us feel better and feel impressive. But that's, yeah, how it goes. Rocco says, doesn't it clear it up if you say something was real but not anymore? I drove a car for a few minutes ago, but I'm not driving now. No, because what do you mean by real then? What do you mean by was at that point? Yeah, it had some property. What was the property that was real then? You could call it materiality. You can define it as real star, real now, whatever. You can make up a name for the difference between the past and the present. So really just saying that doesn't tell you much, but everyone gets it because we all have a memory and be this is what we remember it happened. Funk Thor says, Aristotle literally gave the first formal logical system in 300. He has to go to philosophy, but only for that. Yeah. So, that's the whole point. It's not negative 300. It was it's negative 500 or whatever. But, yeah. 450? I forget. It doesn't even matter. But yeah. Aristotle was the first Plato was a philosopher, but Aristotle had more of a system going, so more systematic. That's fine. K-Bar says, but things could exist. But things could exist that aren't real. Saying things that could exist aren't real. Saying possible world there exists some counterfactual scenario without that being a real world. Maybe I'm just being loose with the exists, but clearly another loaded word. Does Spider-Man exist? Is Spider-Man real? Yeah, and that's the whole point. Spider-Man, they say it's Spider-Man, Sherlock Holmes. Philosophers like to use as an example. Does Sherlock Holmes' house exist? Does 221B Baker Street? Is that real? Well, it's real in terms of the fictional story. It's not. It has no existence in the quote unquote actual world, but then you have to define fictional world, actual world, and then the same thing with the past. There's the actual world and then there's the past world too. So you can make all these possible worlds, and I don't know if this solves your problem. You're just defining different properties on different worlds, and some of them do not exist now, and that's part of the issue. Now, is this all a labeling problem, and we're just mislabeling things past, future? It's just a labeling problem. It's probably more sophisticated and deep than that. What is history? What is past? What is future? There's going to be more to this, but yeah, it's not going to confuse people when you say, well, look, the now has materiality or whatever that is. It has physical reality. In the past, it's no longer has this sort of physical thing because it is no longer has causal, there's no causal interactions with the past. It's gone, and the future has no causal interactions. The only causal interactions that are happening now exist now because that's the things that have causal effects. And you can say, well, look, what's causality then? Who the fuck knows? But again, there's lots of things we can say. Well, I can I got my orange pencil, I dropped my orange pencil, and I hit my fucking mic. I'm sorry. But that sort of thing happens in the now. It doesn't happen in the past. It happens now, and that has this causal thing. So you can define it in all these ways. So yeah. Thales, everything is water. Fight me. Aristotle, hold up. Yeah, exactly. Was his past tense. Plato existed because he's no longer living doesn't take away from his realness. Yeah, but just saying past tense, what does that mean? What does it mean, Rocco, to say past tense? Explain it. Funk Thor says, I think we can say event that is real only if we have information accession from some light source from then. Yeah, again, that's the causal chain theory there. So we've got like the light source, but that's just causal chain stuff. And that's fine. But again, what is it that we can say, why was it real? Because we have this causal chain thing going on. Okay. But what was the past then? But what was it? We have the result of it, but where did it go? Energy says, what's your perspective on the growing block theory of time? We said the past and present exist, but not the future. I mean, that's kind of where it sounds like Aristotle's at. It's like, yeah, or at least the Putnam version of Aristotle. That's a growing block here, where the future's open, but we don't, everything else is set. I don't know. I still have to work this out, Energy. I mean, I'm going to like try to write the paper over the next few months. I'm going to have to try to figure out, what do I think about all this? I don't have a whole lot of opinions on time at the moment. It's a hard topic, and I've never thought about before. That's kind of why I'm interested in doing it now. But I don't really have any strong feelings on the different theories of time. K-Par says there's like causal continuity, I guess. Its effects are still propagating. Yeah, and I mean, that's what you can say is like, well, that's what we think the causal like chain's doing, is like that's the result from the past. But again, that doesn't explain what the past is. That's just how we sort of understand it. Rocco says, we can't explain time that well, except that it's linear and only goes one way as far as we know. Exactly. It's like, well, it's linear as far as we know and only goes one way as far as we know. A lot of, hedging our bets on this one. Is there an informational theory aspect? Yes, Dojo. So this is part of the relativity thing. The way I understand relativity is sort of understood nowadays is that you can't actually have information that travels faster than the speed of light. The information, of course, could be transferred at photons or some other thing, but we just can't like have any sort of causal information interaction at the speed faster than the speed of light. And so this really does actually tie into information theory because you can't break causality. And that's really what's at below this, the whole discussion, because for us to make sense of the world, we have to have like sort of like causal stories. And so it needs to make causal sense. And so really what's going on is you can't break your causal relations. And that's kind of what's going on here. Rocco says, quote, I'm on a one-way dead-end road and I don't even know how I got here. Stephen Wright. Yeah, it sounds about right. Yeah, okay. Yeah, we could have closed time chains, Funk Thor, yeah. But those are all theoretical things. We've never experienced one as far as anyone knows. Okay, let's see. How much more of this we got? Okay, we got to read the full 3 pages. Okie dokie. But yeah, we're just talking about that. So if somebody in the future, something happens to what looks like the future of us, but like they say it's real, and then we are like, well, that's the future for us. Well, then the future is fixed for us. Okay. So the point becomes even clearer when viewed a bit more abstractly. Let us assume that Aristotle was right. Then I shall show that we can define a relation of absolute simultaneity contradicting relativity. Well, god damn it, of course you can. Aristotle was using 2,000-year-old physics. Like it's not that hard. Namely, Putnam defines an event to be absolutely future if the statement that it has a property pi, where pi is one of the properties in the list alluded to before, has no truth value. Putnam defines an event to be absolutely present if it is not absolutely future, and if every event that is in its proper future, that is, occurs later on its world line, this is relativistically invariant, is absolutely future. Then two events are absolutely simultaneous if and only if there is a time in the coordinate system of any observer at which they are both absolutely present. Also, one can define that observer to be absolutely at absolute rest. Okay. Yeah. So y'all can read up on physicsy stuff. It is no criticism of Aristotle's ability to say that he was mistaken any more than it is a criticism of Newton that he failed to foresee relativity. Yeah. Well, it's even worse to criticize someone 2,000 years ago than someone a few hundred years ago. Had the world been different than it is, these sorts of objections could not be brought against Aristotle's view. But it is important to see that Aristotle's view depends upon an absolute pastness and futurity just as much Newtonian physics does, and that it is obsolete for the same reason. Again, why are we beating up on Aristotle here? Like, this is using completely different physical data. But anyway. Putnam might try to save the view that future contingents have no truth value by saying that even present tense statements have no truth value if they refer to the outcomes of events that are so far away that a causal signal informing me of the outcome could not have reached me now without traveling faster than light. And this is what I was saying. Why don't you do this? This is the whole point, is that you're talking about causal signal information could not have reached you faster than light. In other words, I might attempt saying that statements about events that are in neither the upper half nor the lower half of my light cone have no truth value. In addition, statements about events in the upper half of my light cone have no truth value since they are in my future according to every coordinate system. So only statements about events in the lower half of my light cone have a truth value. Only events in that are in my past according to all observers are determined. Yeah. Functor says, yeah, some physicists say that some solutions to Einstein's field equations are not physical in the sense that they break causality. So yeah, and that's the issue. It's like you can do it, but it's going to be very hard to make sense of. Energy says, I'd be surprised if Putnam is not familiar with the fact that Neo-Lorentzian allows for absolute simultaneity with the same math and empirical predictions as special relativity. The only reasonable criticism of it is Occam's razor. However, I believe preserving absolute simultaneity is more epistemically valued than Occam's razor. Well, you're going to have trouble there, Energy, because the absolute simultaneity stuff, people really, like, since special relativity came around, they really have gotten rid of that. Maybe they'll come back. Maybe it'll come back, but I think you're fighting an uphill battle against the physicists, which I don't suggest. But anyway, it could. Okay, this last move, however, flagrantly violates the idea that there are no privileged observers. Why should a statement... wait, did I misread this? What am I reading? Okay, in addition, statements about events in the upper half of life have no truth value since they're in my future according to every coordinate system. So only statements about events in the lower half of my life cone have a truth value. Only events that are in my past according to all observers are determined. This last move, however, flagrantly violates the idea that there are no privileged observers. See, this is where I disagree with Putnam. He is, I think, conflating the no privileged observers in the physical sense with no privileged observers in the epistemic sense, saying, well, that person knows something and therefore it is knowledge that everyone in the universe could have. I disagree with that. This is saying no privileged observers only works in terms of physics, not in terms of epistemology. You have to keep the thing separate because epistemology is philosophy or metaphysics or whatever else, and the no privileged observers has to do with coordinate systems. And I don't like this use of this. And so I find this to be, this is exactly where I disagree with Putnam here. Anyway. Okay, yeah. Why should a statement having or not having a truth value depend upon the relation of the events referred to in the statement to just one special human being, me? See, I don't think it's one special human being, but you see Putnam is using truth here as universal. And not, so it's like, it's not physically true. They're using it as metaphysically true because it's not dependent on the person. But again, the no privileged observers is a physical theory, not a metaphysical one. If you want to do metaphysical no privileged observers, believe me, I agree with that too, but you can't conflate them. Okay, moreover, the following highly undesirable consequence flows from this last view. Let Oscar be a person whose whole world line is outside the light cone of me now. So this is someone on the other side of the universe, far away and moving away from him. Let me future be a future stage of me such that Oscar is in the lower half of the light cone of me future. Then when that future becomes present, it will become true that Oscar existed, although it will never have had a truth value to say in the present tense Oscar exists now. things could come to have been without its ever having been true that they are. Yeah. So this is the funny thing. If you can allow people to move around your light cone, sure. But that's like moving around the past. It's weird. Okay. Okay, so we've got disagreements about paradoxes getting solved. Okay. Morals and conclusions. What morals should we draw from all of this? In the first part of the paper, I showed that if we couple the assumption 3 with the principle 2, we must say that future things are real even if they do not exist yet. Strictly speaking, I showed that only that some future things are real, and then only on the assumption that the situation shown in figure 1 obtains. And I'm actually okay with that. I think some future things could be real. I don't think very many of them, but some of them are. And that's okay. But the argument can obviously be extended, bringing out in certain further assumptions with which virtually no one would argue to show that all future things are real. Things here include events, and likewise that all past things are real, even though they do not exist now. And yeah, I don't agree with all of that. To spell this out, if I accept 2, then I must say that all those things are real, but not only those things as we saw, which bear to me the following relation. The relation y bears to me to x just in case y is simultaneous with x in the coordinate system of x. I must describe the relation in this way, and not the relation y bears to x just in case y is simultaneous with x in the coordinate system of me now, because otherwise I would be committed to the view that the real things bear to me now a relation which is not Lorentz invariant, and hence that they define an absolute simultaneity. But principle 3 then requires that I also count everything and event which bears the transitive closure of R to me, that is, which bears R to me, or which bears R to something that bears R to me, or which bears R to something that bears R to something that bears R to me, or ... as real. Again, what's the sense of real here? But everything and event in space-time bears the transitive closure of the above relation R to me, at least if there are enough observers. And if we allow all physical systems, even electromagnetic fields, as observers, as why should we not, and allow observers to use coordinate systems in which they are not at rest, then there are certainly enough observers. Yeah, this is a Maxwell demon sort of problem here, where you've got a demon at every spot and can see the light going past. And so you've got an observer going along. But again, the problem with a Maxwell demon is that it will affect things as it goes. You can't just observe the light going past. You are observing the light, you're going to change the light. This is all Jeremy Beremy? Yeah, exactly. Truth is all timey-wimey bullshit? Yes. Yeah. Okay. Barude, what's up? What's up, Barude? How you been? If anyone doesn't know our buddy Barude, shout out the Barude. Baru is also a philosophy streamer. Finishing up the PhD currently. And he's in the other side of the world, so obviously very simultaneous with us right here, because he's in Australia and I'm in New York. You're well, man. How's it going? It's all right. We're reading this classic paper on philosophy of physics by Hilary Putnam. It's actually kind of interesting. It's one of these like, how did he's like sort of breaking special relativity, and it's like, okay, it's subtle. Hilary Putnam is very good. And so it's like, how do you break physics? Well, this is some like logical arguments to do it, but I've got my beef with what he's saying. So it's actually not bad. Other than that, I've been digging out of snow. Like, I've got about a foot of snow here, maybe a little more, I don't know. But like, I've been digging out, and it's very cold. Very cold. So, how you doing? Was it lunchtime over there now? Yeah. What are you having for lunch? Anyway, we're finishing this up. We're on page 9 of 9. Yeah. So yeah, this is the Maxwell demon, where you've got like enough observers everywhere telling you what's going on. And it's that's the problem, is that you can't do that without affecting the system. And that's exactly what was happening, is that I think you can't actually say that like just because someone else knows something or something is real for somebody else that it's real for you. I don't think that makes sense. Migraine day, yeah, it sucks. Long, spent the day working on stream stuff and broke my brain, but not actually eating and not hungry. Yeah. Streaming stuff is hard. Like, people do not realize how difficult even a simple stream is. It's real tough. Don't tell that many people you got that much snow. Why not? I got like a foot of snow. I mean, people got more, but yeah. Yeah, what's wrong with telling people about snow, Tindarius? It seems odd. Okay, finishing this up. In the second part of the paper, Putnam showed that contingent statements about future events already have a truth value. In consequence, the tenseless notion of existence, that is, the notion that amounts to will exist or has existed or exists for now, is perfectly well defined. This is fortunate since the upshot of the first part of the paper could also have been stated by saying that the notion of being real turns out to be coextensive with the tenseless notion of existence. I conclude that the problem, why not have more rules? No more rules. I'm not a rule-based person. No. There are some guidelines though. Okay. Putnam concludes that the problem of the reality and the determinateness of future events is now solved. Moreover, it is solved by physics and not by philosophy. We have learned that we live in a four-dimensional and not a three-dimensional world, and that space and time, or better, space-like separations and time-like separations, are just two aspects of a single four-dimensional continuum with a peculiar metric, which sometimes permits distance y x equals 0, even when x is not equal to y. Indeed, I do not believe that there are any longer any philosophical problems about time. There is only the physical problem of determining the exact physical geometry of the four-dimensional continuum that we inhabit. In this paper, I have talked only about the relativistic aspect of the problem of physical time. There is, of course, also the problem of thermodynamics and whether the second law does or does not explain the existence of irreversible processes, the so-called problem of the direction of time, and the problem of the existence or non-existence of true irreversibilities in quantum mechanics, which I gather is currently under hot discussion. I have not talked about these problems. Hilary Putnam out of Harvard. Okay, that was that. But anyway, now what we do is we rate the paper. You're not rating me, you're rating the paper. Although you can also rate me if you want to. But use your emotes. The emotes are in chat below. They're better TTV emotes, so everyone has access to them. If you don't, you just see the text in your chat. You can see them below here. But if you thought this was a fun paper and made you give you some fun ideas, give it a brain dance. Spelling and capitalization do matter here. If you thought this talked about existential or artistic drama, give it a Nog Scream. You give it an Ouroboros for deep ancient ideas, Nog Oro. If you thought this had slicing and dicing arguments, kind of fancy analytic stuff, Nog Knife. Nog Navel gazing only for academics. Nog Turd, all style, no substance, still poop underneath. And Nog Grapes for big claims that shrivel up. You can also use the global vote yay and vote nay of Twitch if you just want to give it an overall thumbs up, thumbs down. And my vote meh. Note, I calculate an overall score. Anything in the green makes the score go up. Anything in the red makes it go down. And the vote meh makes it go towards the middle. Tindios goes yay for the paper. Well, thank you. Functor Braindance. Oh, thank you. I'll fix that. Okay, you fixed it yourself. If you don't see it in chat. Energy says knife, grapes, meh, and a nay. Ra says brain knife. Ra, that is neither a brain dance nor a nog knife, as I think you know. But if you want to keep your brain knife, no, you should probably not want to keep a brain knife. That seems weird. Yeah, but thank you for the ratings, Tindarios, Energy, and Functhor. Unreal says knife grapes. I'd have to go back through it rather more slowly to get what he's really up to, but I think you can commit to those two. Yeah. So Tindarios also gave it a brain dance. K-Par's brain dance man a yay. Day Marshall gave it a yay. Yeah, I mean, this is kind of what I expect out of high-powered 20th century analytic philosophy. Putnam here has marshaled some arguments to make time just sort of unitary, everything's real, argue for a sense of time given the best way we were describing relativity at the time and our understanding of it. And so this is high analytic philosophy in my opinion. Douglas says neither real nor true were defined adequately. And that was my argument also, Dojo. I thought they were using real or true in multiple senses, because physically real and physically true are not true simplicator, real simplicator. They're not metaphysical, which is, I think, how it was getting used, even though all that was getting discussed in terms of the physics was the physics. And I think it's fun to talk about philosophy of physics. However, I find the substance of the paper to fall into scientism to some extent. That's fair. Okay, yeah, it's fair. Maybe grapes, meh. But I like grapes, so not so bad, but it's still a problem. Yeah, that's part of the issue. And Dojo's busy with jiu-jitsu, so he can't say, it's fine. And I hope the jiu-jitsu is going well. I did a little jiu-jitsu when I was in college. It was fun. Unreal says, at some point, Hilary Putnam got influenced by pragmatism, but I heard none of that here. No, this was not pragmatic at all. This is just straight argumentation about time and physics. Nog egg. What's a nog egg? Is that like eggnog? Is that a drink? Hugh, what's up, Hugh? Don't mind me just doing work lurk, but sending lots of love and lemons. Thank you, Hugh, for stopping by. Good to see you, man. You know what we can do? We're going to shout out Hugh. Here's another crazy Canadian. We like our Canadians here. Hugh does a lot of classic gaming, actually. He's playing, what was Hugh playing the other day? He plays like, Simpsons hit and run stuff. It's good time. So the Hugh's around from some of the other communities I'm in, so it's fun. Yeah. So if you want to go hang out, chill. Hugh's good peoples. Yeah. And Nog Egg, need to extend the season gestures to everything. Yeah, fuck. So much may invade you. Eggnog would be better. Yeah, I should have an eggnog. I should have an eggnog emote. Doger says, from my perspective, I can say that the events are simultaneous, but other observers have a different truth. That's the point. Yep. And that's the issue. It's like, what do you mean by true at that point? And that's the difficulty, because we can't define the truth. We can define truth as in physics, but that doesn't seem to be how we use it in other places. We don't have a universal theory of this. We don't. Oh yeah. So, will the Australians invade Canada? Is that what we're doing in chat? So I wasn't able to access the paper. No, energy. I did. It was available online somewhere. I linked it. I put the link in chat. It was over 50 pages. The one that they had on they had on the webpage had abbreviations in it. And so we couldn't, it was a 50-page paper, not a 10-page paper, because what they had online was abbreviated. It had just ... dots at the end of some sections. That's all it was. Ross says, more thinking about the Americans that are currently immigrating. Yeah. Well, it is something I think about. It's like, what am I doing here in the U.S. at this point? But anyway, what do I think about this? Yeah, I feel like this is like Nog knife stuff. This is just analytic philosophy. So we're going to get some Nog knives. I agree. Now, I think he made his argument. I just think some of the arguments were bad. And so he's going to get a Nog turd also. And that's kind of how I feel about it. It was analytic philosophy, but I think it was, as Dojo was saying, as I was saying, some of the big terms like real and true were ill-defined. He also just like used Aristotle willy-nilly. I don't know if it was good or not. Maybe it's fine, but did not actually, like, it was like, well, Aristotle's wrong for not understanding relativity. It's like, yeah, so what? And like, did you actually be fair to Aristotle? And like, is that actually a good way to go argue for the as an example? I mean, it wasn't that unfair to Aristotle. He used it as an example of someone who said the future is unset. So yeah, like growing block theory. Like the past is set and the present is like set, but the future is open. Okay, fine. You're going to use Aristotle as an example of a growing block theory. Now, this is only in whatever, the 60s. So the McTaggart sort of like theories were already out there. Maybe Putnam didn't need to or care to use them. That's fine. But it's like, yeah, let's just like, all right, let's use Aristotle. That's cool. But again, don't beat up on Aristotle. It's unfair.